Footprints from the Invisible World. Devonshire, England. A winter night in February 1855. A cold wind whipped through the low roofs of houses, rustling the branches of the trees. The whole area was in pitch darkness, where the weak light from oil lamps could not penetrate the dense fog. Snow had fallen all night, covering the ground in a soft, pristine layer, like a virgin cloth that had never been soiled. Don't let the like button be lonely, don't let the share button wither, and don't let the subscribe button wait for you forever. But as the first rays of light crept across the horizon, as the cockerels hesitantly crowed to announce a new day, the people of the small villages of Topsham, Exmouth, Dawlish, and Teignmouth discovered a sight that paralyzed their hearts. Footprints. Not human footprints, nor were they the footprints of any animal they had ever known. Strange prints, deeply etched into the soft snow, stretching on and on, as if an invisible creature had crossed fields, crossed streams, climbed over roofs, and even passed through solid walls, leaving behind strange and inexplicable traces. A series of tiny, perfect, regular footprints like tiny hooves. They were not winding like the tracks of a wild animal. They were not messy like the footprints of a drunk at night. The footsteps moved in a straight line, defying all physical barriers. Fences, frozen rivers, even the steep roofs of houses. Who or what had made them? Fear grew as one realized. The footprints were not limited to one village. They stretched for 60 to 100 miles across the land, as if their masters were not limited by any earthly terrain. Immediately, the rumors spread like wildfire across the dry grasslands. Some swore they had heard heavy footsteps in the stillness of the night. Others claimed to have glimpsed a strange figure gliding through the mist, a tall creature with devilishly deformed legs. In the small churches scattered throughout the region, church bells rang out their long, mournful peals. Ministers held urgent prayers, reading from the Bible to ward off the demons. People closed their doors, sprinkled holy water around their houses, and muttered traditional incantations. Children were forbidden to leave their homes, and the elderly sighed, stared into space, and muttered, "Satan passed through us last night." But was there really a devil roaming through frozen Devonshire? Or was it just a prank by nature, or even human mischief? Many theories have been put forward, from kangaroos escaping from circuses to strange animals that no one has ever seen. Even Victorian scientists could not come up with a satisfactory explanation. No one could explain why the footprints could continue through the glacier, climb up to the roof of a high house, and then suddenly disappear into thin air. Not a trace, not a sound, not a witness. Only the cold rows of footprints on the white snow, like a ghostly message from the invisible world. As the years passed, the incident gradually faded into the dim memories of the locals, becoming a story told by the fireside every winter. But occasionally, on foggy nights, people said that if you listened carefully, you could hear the sound of hooves somewhere in the darkness. A creature that no one had ever seen. A mystery that will never be solved. A footprint from another world. And to this day, more than 150 years later, the devil's footprints in England in 1855 remain one of the most chilling mysteries in human history, defying reason, burning the imagination, and raising the question that remains unanswered. What did Devonshire witness that night? A prank, an unknown creature, or the very presence of an ancient darkness that people fear in the depths of their souls? Chapter 1. Devonshire in 1855, Historical and Social Context. An England divided between light and darkness. In 1855, England was experiencing the height of the Victorian era, an era of great advances in science, industry, and knowledge. Inventions such as the railway, the telegraph, and the steam engine opened up a new world where human limitations seemed to be pushed further than ever before. But alongside the light of reason, the shadow of superstition and supernatural fear still silently loomed over the country. While the universities of Oxford and Cambridge were fervently debating Darwin, chemistry, and astronomy, in remote rural areas like Devonshire, beliefs in ghosts, witches, and omens were as strong as they had been for centuries. Science and superstition, two parallel worlds, existing but never in harmony. Among the farmers plowing the fields covered with frost, among the blacksmiths and shepherds, the belief that unseen forces were controlling their lives was not lost. A sick child, a bad harvest, an unexpected accident, all could be signs of intervention from dark forces. And as fate would have it, it was at that moment, in the cold winter of 1855, that signs of something beyond human understanding appeared, in the form of strange footprints in the snow. Devonshire, the land of isolation and mystery. Devonshire, or Devon as it is now commonly known, is located in the southwest of England, a land of diverse terrain. Wild fields, dark forests, rugged coastal cliffs eroded by the waves over the centuries. Devonshire's climate in February is extremely harsh. Cold winds blow in from the sea, and thick fogs descend each night like a white shroud over all life. Roads are scarce, only small, muddy paths covered with snow. This natural isolation makes Devonshire a land almost cut off from the rest of the kingdom. News from London or Exeter takes days, even weeks, to reach the small villages deep inland. In the darkness of isolation, ghostly legends flourish, weaving horror stories of creatures wandering in the mist, restless ghosts, and the ghosts of witches burned at the stake in the Middle Ages. Devonshire people believe that there are forests that no one dares to enter after sunset, graveyards where ghostly lamps dance, and rivers where drowned souls call to the living with haunting lullabies. It was on this dark and mysterious land, on a winter night filled with thick fog, that inexplicable footprints appeared. The mood of the people of Devonshire before the devil's footprints. That morning, when the people stepped out of their houses, they immediately felt something unusual in the air. The sun, although it had risen, was hidden by a thick layer of gray clouds. The weak light shone through the white snow, reflecting a ghostly light, cold and creepy. When the first footprints were discovered, surprise quickly turned to panic. The elderly muttered ancient prayers. The young people went to the church with frightened eyes. In their hearts, no one dared to say it out loud, but all thought one thing. Satan has passed through this place. Devonshire in 1855 was not a place for the faint-hearted. There, darkness is not only the absence of light, but also the realm of primitive fears that science has never been able to dispel. Those strange footprints, defying all laws of physics, all common sense, not only left marks on the white snow, but also engraved in the minds of the people a haunting that they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. The outside world, a troubled England. While Devonshire was in turmoil and fear, the rest of England was not at peace either. In 1855, the country was engaged in the Crimean War, a distant but bloody war that saw thousands of young British men leave their homeland to fight in harsh conditions. News of casualties, disease, and the government's inability to protect the soldiers unsettled the people. Newspapers of the time were full of articles criticizing the government, describing the horrific field hospitals where thousands of soldiers died in agony. In such a time of uncertainty, the human mind became more sensitive than ever to signs from the supernatural world. A strange footprint in the snow, in this context, was more than just a strange phenomenon. It was a warning from above, an ominous sign for the future. As darkness and fear take hold of the human mind, the line between reality and fantasy becomes blurred. Devonshire, 1855, became the stage for one of the most chilling mysteries in British history, and perhaps of all humanity. Chapter 2, The First Witnesses. As dawn unveils mysteries. In the early morning of February 9th, 1855, as the roosters crowed through the cold mist, the first villagers to emerge from their homes immediately sensed something unusual. John Daw, a baker in the village of Topsham, was one of the first to see the strange tracks. As he opened the wooden door, preparing to light the oven for the day, his eyes froze. Right on the doorstep of his house, in the fresh snow that had fallen the night before, were regular footprints, deep, distinct, as if some strange creature had passed by only a few hours before. John hesitated for a moment. The footprints were only about 4 inches wide, cloven hooves, even. His eyes narrowed. It couldn't be a dog, nor could it be a deer, for the tracks were not crooked or meandering, but straight as an arrow across the road, through his yard, and then disappeared into the white mist in the distance. What the hell is going on? John muttered, shivering in the cold. Soon after, other villagers in Topsham, and then in the neighboring villages of Exmouth, Dawlish, Kinton, and Teignmouth, noticed the same thing. The tracks were everywhere, across fields, riverbanks, roofs, and even sheer walls. The villagers account, terrified and baffled. Thomas Oxenham, a sheep farmer who lived near Exmouth, reported, "I followed them for nearly 2 miles. They did not meander like hounds. No, they just kept going, straight and clear, through bushes, over hedges, over frozen ponds. Nothing could stop them." Another, Mrs. and Clark, the oldest person in Woodbury, recounted in a trembling voice, "We saw footprints going straight across the roof of the church. How could any living thing walk on such a slippery roof in the dark? No, not a mortal. I swear to God. In some places, the footprints appeared in areas inaccessible to human feet. Flooded fields, half-frozen rivers, or stone walls more than 8 feet high." Rector Ellicombe of Dawlish Church recorded in his personal diary, "This cannot be a joke. The footprints are so regular, so consistent, and spread over such a distance that no animal or man could have made them in one night." Strange details in the footprints. Not only did the prints appear unusual, but the shape and behavior of the prints also terrified witnesses. Hoof-shaped, unlike any native animal. Many immediately associated them with the image of the devil in Christian beliefs, which is depicted with hooves. Stride distance. Average of 8 to 16 inches, 20 to 40 centimeters. So regular, so precise, as if a moving machine. Over all terrain. Not only did the prints go underground, they climbed walls, crossed roofs, and crossed frozen rivers. In some places, the prints ended abruptly, as if the creature had flown into the air and disappeared. No signs of confusion. If it were an animal, one would expect to see scratches, slides, or disturbances in the snow. But no, the prints were so neat and delicate, as if they had been placed carefully. Fear spreads. As the day wore on, rumors of the devil's footprints spread across Devonshire. Village parties were canceled. Shops closed early. Parents forbade their children to go out after dark. Some families gathered in churches, praying without ceasing. Ministers held emergency baptisms, recited exorcisms, and lit candles all night. "It's a sign of the end of the world," declared one terrified villager. No one dared to go out at night anymore. Horseshoes were placed on doors, garlic hung in windows, ancient ways to ward off evil spirits. A primal, deep, visceral fear spread across the English countryside like an invisible storm. Official records and initial investigations. Remarkably, the event did not exist only in folklore. Several local newspapers of the time, such as the Times and the Illustrated London News, picked up the story. Some local officers even attempted to organize a semi-official investigation. Officer James Featherstone Haw, stationed at Dawlish Police Station, led a group of farmers who followed the tracks for several hours, but they ended abruptly in the middle of a snow-covered field with no sign of a vehicle or animal. A local hunting party scoured the hills, but found no trace of a creature that matched. Despite such efforts, no satisfactory explanation was offered. And as time went on, the fear in the hearts of the people grew, becoming heavier and heavier, like a ghost clinging to every soul. Those strange footprints, could they be an omen? A message from the other world? Or the presence of a creature previously unknown to man? We have no answer. But what is certain is that, to those first witnesses, Devonshire in the winter of 1855 was no longer a land of peace. Chapter 3. The first hypotheses, science and superstition clash. When reason meets fear. As soon as news of the strange footprints spread, two opposing reactions immediately erupted in the community. On one side were the religious and superstitious, who believed the footprints were undeniable evidence of supernatural intervention, perhaps demons, vengeful spirits, or even signs of the end of the world. On the other side were the local scientists and intellectuals who tried to find a reasonable explanation, whether it was animals, unusual weather, or elaborate pranks. This confrontation made the already tense atmosphere in Devonshire even more intense. Every pub, every market corner, every church became a battlefield of heated debate. Animal hypothesis, kangaroos and badgers? One of the earliest theories from hunters and farmers was that the tracks might have been those of an animal. It could be an escaped kangaroo from some traveling circus, declared a hunter in Woodbury. The idea may seem strange, but at the time, circuses regularly traveled through the English countryside, bringing exotic animals like kangaroos, ostriches, and even leopards. The problem: kangaroo tracks do not resemble cloven hooves. And most importantly, a kangaroo could not have walked through roofs, stone walls, or frozen lakes, as the track suggested. Others suggested that it could have been a badger, otter, or weasel. These animals were nocturnal and could have left tracks in the snow. But the size, shape, and absolute continuity of the footprints did not match any local mammal. And badgers and weasels could not have made perfectly spaced tracks over miles. Natural hypothesis: freezing water vapor? Some scientists of the time, such as Reverend H.D. Ellicombe, suggested that the tracks could be natural phenomena, such as warm water vapor escaping from the ground and freezing into strange shapes on the snow surface. Ice melted in irregular shapes, creating the illusion of footprints. But the tracks were too uniform and had a consistent direction of travel. They could not have formed that way by chance. Freezing water vapor could not have formed a sharp cloven hoof shape, much less stepped across stone roofs and walls. The young geologists of the time were quick to dismiss this hypothesis. The prank theory, an elaborate conspiracy? More realistic people believe that this is just an elaborate prank by one or a group of people to cause chaos. They speculate. Maybe someone made a device that simulated cloven hooves, attached it to a shoe, and then moved it around all night. The problem: the area was too large, dozens of square miles in a single cold night. There was no sign of a group of people. No skid marks, no campfires, no traces of vehicles. And how could a person, or even a group of people, cross the glacier, climb onto a slippery roof, and then continue walking as if nothing had happened? The prank idea, therefore, satisfied only a small number of people who were already willing to disbelieve the strange. Supernatural theory, the devil's foot. Meanwhile, a growing superstitious force, led by local clergymen and devout Christians, was growing. They were convinced that the footprints were those of the devil, searching for lost souls in the cold winter night. The cloven hoof shape matched perfectly with ancient descriptions of Satan's foot in the Bible. The footprints on roofs, through walls, and on glaciers were evidence that the entity was not limited by the laws of human physics. Some church sermons even described, "That night the devil roamed, probing the hearts of men." The footprints were a warning that no one was safe. The atmosphere of fear and gloom was rising. Exorcisms and urgent prayers were held across Devonshire. Otherworldly theory, aliens? Some unconventional intellectuals, influenced by the emerging science fiction theories of the time, put forward an extremely bold hypothesis. An alien creature, perhaps from outer space or from a parallel dimension, had landed in Devonshire on the night of February 9th, 1855. They reasoned that the implausible features of the terrain that the footprints crossed suggested that the creature did not obey gravity or the physical limitations of the Earth. The footprints' sudden disappearance in the middle of the field could be evidence that the creature had flown or had been retrieved back to its vehicle. Although considered superstitious and crazy at the time, the hypothesis persisted for many generations to come, especially as humanity gradually became exposed to the idea of UFOs and aliens in the 20th century. One truth no one knows for sure. Finally, through hundreds of debates, articles, and investigations, despite official accounts and church sermons, the stark truth remains. No one has ever seen the creature. No one has ever found any real evidence of foul play or natural error. No one has ever explained how the footprints could traverse all terrain despite snow, water, stone walls, and roofs. The Devonshire Devil's footprints of 1855 will forever remain one of the most bizarre mysteries in British history, defying science, religion, and the human imagination. Chapter 4. The Hunt for the Trace. Hunters, explorers, and scientists take charge as the land turns into a snowy maze. On the morning of February 10th, 1855, news of the Devil's footprints spread beyond the borders of Devonshire. Not only the locals, but also experienced hunters, adventurous explorers, and even a few curious scientists from nearby towns flocked to the area, armed with compasses, hunting rifles, notebooks, and a mixture of excitement and apprehension. They believed that if they followed the tracks long enough, they would find the culprit, or at least lift the veil of mystery that shrouded the English countryside. But no one could have predicted what awaited them. Strange hunting parties. Expeditions quickly formed. Groups of hunters, armed with pistols, daggers, ropes. The scholars, carrying magnifying glasses, barometers, and leather notebooks. The local priests, chanting and carrying holy water in case of encountering evil things. Each group chose a different branch of the footprints to follow, but the strangeness of the journey quickly made them realize that this was no ordinary hunt. Where did the tracks lead? Reports from the hunting parties recorded. The footprints crossed the frozen fields, but suddenly disappeared in the middle of the clearing. No sign of slipping or falling. The footprints climbed straight up to the roof, despite the steepness and slipperiness. The footprints led into the dark forest, but after a few dozen meters, they suddenly stopped as if the creature had vanished into thin air. A famous hunter in Dawlish recounted, "I followed the footprints all the way to the woods by the river, but when I looked up, I could swear I saw a dark figure moving among the trees, taller than any man I had ever seen. But as the group drew near, there was nothing but the howling wind and the leaden sky." The mysterious encounter. One of the most famous stories is that of the young geologist John Hartley, who was determined to follow the trail through the night. Towards midnight, as the pale moonlight filtered through the thick clouds, Hartley and his two companions suddenly heard a light scraping sound in the snow just ahead of them. They said it sounded like sharp claws scraping the ice. The air suddenly became cold, as if they had entered another dimension. And then a strange wind from no particular direction blew through, carrying with it the strong smell of sulfur. By the light of the oil lamp, they caught a glimpse of a figure, small, thin, moving very quickly. But in the blink of an eye, it vanished into the darkness like a mirage. When they reached the spot where the shadow had appeared, there was nothing but a pair of forked footprints, deeply etched and melting the thin layer of ice beneath. Frightened and confused, Hartley's group retreated into the night, swearing that they had encountered an entity that did not belong to this world. Other strange discoveries. In addition to footprints, some groups also noted small black burn marks on the snow surface, around the places where the footprints appeared. Small stone crosses placed upside down, mixed in the snow at regular intervals. No one knew who had placed them. Whispers mingled in the wind as the night fell, and even the bravest of men had to admit that they sounded like cold laughter. The whole of Devonshire became a magical maze, where reality and nightmare mingled. Desperate efforts. Despite their best efforts, no one could follow the trail to the end. Every time they thought they were about to catch up, the footprints disappeared, or led into places that humans could not reach: steep cliffs, freezing glaciers, or dense, labyrinthine forests. A veteran explorer exclaimed, "We are not hunting an ordinary creature. We are chasing something beyond the reach of this world." In the end, after many exhausting days and nights in the cold, the search parties dispersed one by one, carrying with them unanswered questions. A haunting memory. The hunt for the trace ended without any explanation. Only memories remain. Unseen footprints, the darkness of the night, the eerie smell of sulfur, and the haunting, generation-long memory of an invisible entity that has silently left its mark on this land. Chapter 5. The Unusual Witnesses, the Untold Stories. A wave of mysterious testimonies. Within days of the strange footprints appearing, dozens of witnesses from across Devonshire flocked to churches, pubs, and local police stations to recount the strange things they had witnessed. But strangely, each story contained the same chilling details, as if they were describing a single entity, one that did not belong to this world. And when you put them all together, a terrifying picture emerges. Martha Gill's account. Martha Gill, an elderly widow living alone on the edge of Exmouth, was the first to come forward and tell the story. I was sitting by the fire that night when I heard a slight noise outside my door. Thinking it was a stray cat, I opened the door a crack to look. But instead of an animal, I saw a short, furry figure walking on two legs. It walked without making sound, despite the thick snow. Mrs. Gill said the creature had glowing red eyes, like two coals smoldering in the winter night. As soon as she uttered a cry of horror, the thing disappeared, leaving behind on the porch a single forked footprint in the freshly fallen snow. The strange knocking at Dawlish Chapel. At Dawlish Chapel, a young minister, Father Thomas Reed, reported. About 3 o'clock in the morning, I was awakened by a knocking at the church door, regular dry. But when I went to investigate, all around was white snow and darkness. On the snow in front of the door, there were only hoof prints. But the strangest thing was circled around the chapel. The minister could not explain why the footprints formed a perfect spiral, as if the creature were performing some mysterious ritual. The story of the postman, John Nash. John Nash, a young postman in Topsham, was considered an honest witness. He recounted the strange experience of delivering mail at dawn. I saw strange footprints leading straight to my house. As I followed them, I swear I saw a small, thin figure running across the street, as fast as the wind. But what chilled me the most was that when I got inside the house, I saw the footprints continuing to run across the ceiling. Although stunned, John Nash managed to take a wooden ruler to measure the footprints. About 4 inches, 10 centimeters, long, cloven like a hoof, and imprinted on the ceiling as if gravity no longer existed. Hunter and prey never caught. Thomas Blight, a famous hunter in Kenton, was no exception. He was confident that any creature could be tracked and taken down by him. But this time, he recounted in a trembling voice. I followed the footprints for 7 hours. They went across fields, through woods, over roofs. But I never got a glimpse of the prey. And every time I got closer, there was a feeling of dread, as if the darkness itself was following me, not the other way around. Blight had to abandon the hunt after discovering a strange streak of black blood, not the blood of any animal he had ever seen, dripping along the footprints. Strange lights in the sky. A group of Teignmouth fishermen reported that they had not only seen footprints in the snow-covered sand near the shore that night, but also a pale blue light appeared in the sky, moving irregularly. As the light swept across the land below, the footprints appeared. They believed that there was some connection between the light and the creature that left the footprints, but what that connection was, no one dared to guess. Forgotten stories. Not all witnesses dared to speak publicly. Some, especially the devout peasants, kept their experiences to themselves in fear of being labeled superstitious or blasphemous. But over the years, through whispers in taverns and dark corners of churches, the fragments of the story began to piece together a chilling picture. A small, strangely shaped creature, a burning red eye, a walk that defied gravity, and a suffocating smell of sulfur. Some whispered that it was the messenger of hell. A quiet wave of terror. In the weeks that followed, as the snow melted and the footprints faded, the fear continued to haunt Devonshire like a ghost. Those who witnessed it were often left sleepless and haunted by nightmares. Some reported cases of livestock and pets disappearing without a trace during the night. Children were forbidden to go outside after dark, and adults carried crosses and read the Bible before bed. And in the hearts of every Devonshire resident, a haunting question remained unanswered. What was the entity, and would it return? Chapter 6. The First Theories, Demons, aliens, or cruel jokes. When fear needs a name. As soon as the strange footprints spread across Devonshire, fear turned into a need for explanations. When faced with the incomprehensible, people always look for answers. Any answers, reasonable or not. And so, within days, a series of bizarre and terrifying theories began to appear, spreading like a winter fever. Demons, the oldest explanation. In a land where Catholic beliefs were still deeply rooted, the most popular theory was also the most terrifying. The footprints belonged to demons. The cloven shape of the footprints, like hoofs. The ability to walk through walls, climb roofs, and disappear into thin air. The smell of sulfur lingered on the night wind. All were classic signs of the devil according to ancient legend. A priest in Woodbury admonished his parishioners in a strange sermon. The presence of such footprints is a warning, a sign that the devil is prowling around us, seeking weak souls. Meanwhile, upside-down stone crosses found near the footprints added fuel to the fire of this macabre theory. Strange creatures, messengers from another world? Some more liberal thinkers, including a few young scientists in Plymouth, put forward another theory. Perhaps Devonshire had accidentally witnessed the appearance of a previously unknown creature. They argued that animals such as kangaroos, rabbits, weasels, can leave strange footprints, especially when heavy snowfall distorts the shape. Or perhaps a mysterious, unrecorded creature was lurking in the ancient forests of England. A small article in the Illustrated London News put forward an even more daring hypothesis. Could it be that, by some unknown means, a creature from another world, from a distant planet, landed in Devonshire that night? A wild idea, but in the thirst for answers, nothing is too absurd. Cruel joke, human hand? Some more realistic people suggested. This was just a cruel joke staged by idlers. They suggested someone used a wooden stick carved in the shape of a hoof, attached to the bottom of a shoe to make the footprints, or used a domestic animal, such as a donkey or goat, to walk through the night to create the strange tracks. Some engineers even came up with a small machine powered by gears and springs that could make its own footprints in the snow. But this argument quickly ran into several objections. How could a person or a group of people move continuously for 100 miles in harsh, icy conditions without being detected? And most importantly, how could they make footprints across glaciers, onto rooftops, and over high walls without leaving any traces of ladders, skid marks, or tools? It was this absurdity that led many to dismiss the joke theory. Or if it was a joke, the person who made the joke was certainly not a normal person. Exotic animals, unwitting troublemakers? Some biologists have raised the possibility that exotic animals that escape from traveling circuses could be the culprits. The names mentioned: kangaroo, with powerful legs, capable of leaping in strangely long strides. Weasel or Arctic fox, small, sharp footprints that could distort strangely in the snow. Donkey, leaving hoof prints if they move erratically. But again, the evidence at the scene contradicts. There were no reports of animals escaping in the area at the time, and the footprints never ran in groups, as animals tend to do. They moved in perfectly straight lines, as if controlled by superior intelligence. A supernatural entity, a whisper in the dark. A small group of scholars who believe in the paranormal propose a more daring hypothesis. The footprints belong to a supernatural entity, a ghost, an ancient being, or even a forgotten god. According to them, the ability to appear and disappear suddenly, the coldness and the evil spirit that accompanied it, signs that did not obey the normal laws of physics, all showed that Devonshire that night had been torn apart by something that came from outside the physical world. All hypotheses fell into a deadlock. Whether it was a demon, a mysterious creature, a prank, or a supernatural phenomenon, no hypothesis could explain all the phenomena. The cloven footprints that appeared on the roofs, high walls, and disappeared into the air. The scorched traces, the smell of sulfur, the dark shadows in the night. The simultaneous witnessing of hundreds of people from many different regions. And so, The mystery of the demon footprints gradually penetrated the minds of the people like a wound that could not heal. They realized that there are things that, no matter how hard we try, are still beyond the understanding of mankind. Chapter 7. Unsolved Mysteries, Surprising Discoveries After Decades. The case was not forgotten. Despite the passage of time, the mystery of the Devonshire Devil's footprint was not forgotten. On the contrary, it lives on in legends, in books, and in the minds of those who love the paranormal. Supernatural researchers, curious historians, adventurous scientists, all of them are constantly searching for clues, hoping to solve one of the world's strangest mysteries. However, the more they learn, the more bizarre details they discover, making the case more puzzling than ever. Recreating the footprints, late crime scene investigations. In the late 19th century, a group of young scholars at Cambridge University decided to reconstruct the footprints' journey based on old records. They followed the same snowy paths, passing through icy fields, little cottages, the dark forests of Devonshire. The strange thing is, even after decades, some of the older witnesses still remembered the exact location where they had seen the footprints. And from their accounts, a more bizarre picture emerged. The footprints did not simply go through obstacles, but selectively avoided sacred places, churches or cemeteries, as if by some invisible constraint. A new detail, never mentioned before, made everyone shudder. Burned cloth, an overlooked sign? During an 1890 survey, a researcher named William Brooke found another unusual detail. An old piece of cloth, singed at the edges, was buried in the mud near a dry stream. Analysis showed that the cloth had been burned by extremely high temperatures over a short period of time, not by a natural fire. This led to a new theory. Was some kind of strange device that had passed through Devonshire that night, leaving behind footprints and scorched remains? An unanswered question, but the burning cloth quietly added a new layer of mystery to an already thrilling case. Mysterious signals from the sky. In 1903, an amateur astronomer, Charles Fort, who would become a legend in the paranormal community, announced a strange discovery. During the night of February 8th to 9th, 1855, a luminous object was reported moving across the sky over southwestern England. The object left a pale blue trail and disappeared into the Celtic Sea. Although there is little documentation to confirm this event, Ford argues, it is possible that the devil's footprints were the result of an extraterrestrial visitation, a phenomenon that humanity was not yet ready to understand. A controversial theory, but one that has made thousands of paranormal believers even more interested. Similar footprints, not just Devonshire. Few people know that. Devonshire is not the only place where strange footprints have appeared. In 1840, in the Jura region of France, cloven hoof prints were also recorded in the snow. In 1870, in the northern region of Scotland, people also discovered cloven footprints going through frozen ponds. Even in the remote region of Transylvania, there are folk tales of devil's footprints imprinted in the snow, appearing and disappearing deep into the forest. The strange coincidence of cultures and the vast geographical distances raise a chilling question. Is something moving around the world in ways we cannot imagine? Unsolved darkness. All these discoveries, instead of bringing light, only spread the mysterious darkness further. The most important questions remain unanswered. What made the footprints? Why did they appear only once and never again? Is there some supernatural intelligence that challenges human understanding? Like a distant echo from another world, the Devonshire Devil's footprints still whisper in the darkness. Try to understand me, if you dare. Chapter 8. Modern Analysis. Can today's science solve the mystery? When science faces the impossible. The 20th and 21st centuries have seen an explosion of technology. We have radar, satellite imagery, 3D geological models, and microscopic chemical analysis. These modern tools have allowed humans to expand their horizons, explore the ocean floor, and solve many ancient mysteries. Yet, when the brightest minds of our time confront the Devonshire Devil's footprint, a cold truth emerges. we still don't know what we're dealing with. Physical analysis, impossible footprint? A team at the University of Exeter in 2002 simulated the shape of the footprint based on surviving descriptions. Footstep distance, mechanically regular, averaging 20 to 40 centimeters, regardless of terrain. Location, from soft ground up vertical walls to slippery roofs. Their conclusion was shocking. No terrestrial creature, animal or human, could have made such a sequence of tracks naturally. The pressure on the snow was extremely uniform, suggesting that the footprints were not affected by the changes in gravity as they climbed roofs or crossed barriers. A physicist involved in the study, Professor David North, exclaimed, "If it was a creature, it would have done something that even a modern jet plane could not do at such low altitudes." Teleportation hypothesis. Science fiction? A group of theoretical physicists in London proposed a hypothesis in 2010. The footprints could be the result of an entity capable of teleportation, moving without touching the ground repeatedly, crossing walls, roofs, and high walls without leaving any trace of climbing. Teleportation is currently only a theoretical concept in quantum mechanics, applied to elementary particles, not large objects. But what if, just what if, a form of existence has surpassed that limit? Then the Devonshire footprints are the first traces of it on Earth. A hypothesis that both stimulates the imagination and instills deep fear in people. We are not alone, and others, if they exist, can walk through our world at any time. Aliens. A difficult hypothesis to swallow? In recent years, ufologists such as Jacques Vallée and John Keel have also mentioned the Devonshire incident in their papers. They don't say, a flying saucer landed, or an alien walking on the snow. Instead, they suggest something more subtle. It may have been a form of occult exploration, not purely physical, but more like a crossover between realities. According to this theory, the footprints are not physical as we understand them. They're the temporary imprints of a presence beyond the 3 dimensions of space. A quick experiment, testing human reactions? A tough hypothesis to swallow, but in the realm of the unsolved, nothing is impossible. Crowd psychology. Is it all a collective hallucination? Some psychologists, such as Dr. Oliver Sacks, have argued that collective perception can sometimes create mass false memories. Under the pressure of fear, people can see what they expect. Are the devil's footprints just a fabrication of a disturbed mind, combining a few natural animal tracks with imagination? This hypothesis explains part of the phenomenon, but ignores the physical evidence. Extremely detailed drawings of footprints. The tracks stick to roofs, brick walls, places where it is impossible to imagine wrongly. That is why most researchers do not accept this as a collective hallucination. A mystery that does not want to be solved? Perhaps a deeper question needs to be asked. Why has the mystery of the Devonshire Devil's footprints not been solved yet? Is it because of a lack of physical evidence? Is there some invisible barrier? Or is the event itself not part of the world that science can reach? A scholar once said, "There are mysteries that cannot be solved by answers, but can only be lived with." The Devonshire Devil's footprint may be one such mystery. Chapter 9. The Strangest Theories, from interdimensional portals to ancient ghosts. Interdimensional portals opening up another world. One of the most bizarre and controversial theories about the Devonshire Devil's footprints begins with the idea of portals in space and time. In the 1990s, a group of theoretical physicists proposed a strange hypothesis that the footprints were not traces left by a being from this world, but rather traces of a being or force from another dimension. One of the most prominent scholars in this group was Dr. Arthur Grayson, who devoted his life to the study of black holes and space-time theories. The Devil's footprints could have been traces of a being or object that had passed through a space-time portal at that time. The tracks do not obey the normal laws of gravity and may only last for a short period of time, much like the sudden appearance and disappearance of objects when they pass through a space-time hole. According to this theory, Devonshire may have been the site of an interdimensional portal that allowed a being, another cosmic system, or even a supernatural life form to visit for a single moment, leaving a trace and then disappearing, as if crossing different dimensions. Ancient ghosts, spirits from the past. Enthusiasts of the paranormal and mythology often cannot ignore another bizarre theory. The Devonshire Devil's footprints are the tracks of ancient spirits or ghosts. In a 1994 survey, a Scottish psychologist, Dr. Penelope Black, has put forward a chilling hypothesis. It is possible that the footprints are the physical traces of ancient spirits or ghosts, entities that died thousands of years ago, but still leave traces in space and time. Dr. Black explains that spirits, or even ghosts of entities from lost civilizations, can accidentally leave physical traces as they travel through the layers of space-time. This would explain the sudden appearance of demon footprints, traces of creatures or spirits that lived thousands of years ago, but for some reason appear in the present. Moreover, the mysterious phenomena may not be blurry images in space, but actual physical traces left by those spirits. It is possible that these ancient spirits used some kind of supernatural portal to return to Earth, leaving behind strange footprints on the ground, traces of the past mixed with the present. Creatures from the future. Another theory, proposed by a group of time theorists in 2005, suggests that the demon footprints are the tracks of beings from the future. These beings could be evolved versions of humans or other life forms, from a distant future where their technology has advanced to the point where they can travel through time. If there is a society so advanced that they can travel through time, there is no reason why they could not stop at important points in the past, such as on February 8th, 1855 in Devonshire. The demon footprints could be a trace they left behind when they returned to the past to observe and study. This theory is extremely bizarre and difficult to test, but it opens up a bold possibility. Are we being observed by beings from the future? These beings, who may have completely escaped the constraints of time and space, could accidentally or intentionally create strange tracks that we cannot explain. A conspiracy from the dark forces? Similar to the alien theories, some believe that the Devonshire Devil's footprints may be a conspiracy from some dark force. Secret organizations, or even supernatural forces, could stage a hoax for some reason, perhaps to test human reactions or simply to create fear and confusion in the public. This theory is reminiscent of the psychological experiments that government agencies might conduct. The Devil's footprints could be part of a secret research program where humans become guinea pigs in strange and mysterious experiments. Is this a warning from the dark forces, or simply an elaborate trick to create panic in the community? Conclusion: an unanswered question. The bizarre theories about the Devonshire Devil's footprints still cannot solve all the puzzles. We still do not know what really happened that night, when mysterious footprints appeared on the ground and disappeared without a trace. Is the footprint a portal to another world, a trace of a soul from the past, or a trace of creatures from the future? Surely the Devil's footprints will always be an inexplicable mystery, a supernatural event that no one can ignore when faced with it, but also cannot fully understand. Chapter 10. The Devil's Footprints in Popular Culture. How the mystery influences film, books, and legends. The mystery is not only in the past, but also in the imagination. The Devonshire Devil's footprints, although never fully solved, have become an icon in popular culture because of their irresistible appeal. They are one of the most mysterious mysteries in history, and as time goes on, they have become an endless source of inspiration for film, literature, and urban legends. The story of the strange footprints in the snow has inspired a series of cultural works, raising questions about other dimensions, aliens, and supernatural entities that we cannot understand. From stories and books to horror movies, the Devil's footprints are not just a natural phenomenon, but have become a living legend. Devil's footprints in cinema, horror movies inspired by it. It is no surprise that one of the most prominent cinematic works related to Devil's footprints is the movie The Devil's Footprints, 2010, based on this real event. Although not a movie about monsters or the supernatural in the traditional sense, the spooky look that the movie brings about strange footprints has made the audience feel both scared and curious. In the movie, The story revolves around a family living in a small house in the middle of the forest, where devil's footprints suddenly appear and lead them into inexplicable events. They are not simply physical traces, but also signs of the existence of a supernatural force that humans cannot explain, along with the horror and mystery elements. This movie has raised devil's footprints to a new level, as a symbol of the unknowable, uncontrollable. The influence of devil's footprints in literature. In literature, devil's footprints have become a familiar theme in the genres of horror stories and mystical legends. Authors such as H.P. Lovecraft and Stephen King also often incorporate strange and inexplicable elements into their works, and the Devonshire Devil's Footprints are a prime example. Their works often explore the idea of events beyond understanding, and the footprints can easily blend into the universes they create, where the nature of reality is not what we see. A notable work is the novel The Footprints of the Devil, 2016, in which a group of researchers travel to Devonshire to solve the mystery of strange footprints that appear one dark night. However, as they get closer to the truth, they begin to realize that the footprints are not just a supernatural phenomenon, but also traces of an invasion from another dimension. The book has been praised for its exploration of the fear of the unknown and how strange footprints can change the course of an explorer's life. Demon footprints in urban legends and ghost stories. Not only appearing in books and films, demon footprints have also become part of urban legends, especially in areas near Devonshire. According to stories passed down through the generations, these footprints are not only the traces of a strange creature, but also a sign of the intersection of worlds. In many legends, these footprints are considered a sign of a curse or a warning from unseen forces interfering with human life. One notable story that Devonshire people often tell is the Phantom Footprints, a legend about a family who witnessed strange footprints appearing in their yard one rainy night. When they tried to find out what they were, the footprints disappeared and everything around them became strangely silent, like something that had just passed through, then disappeared into space. Devil's footprints in modern discussions and debate. Not only a part of popular culture, devil's footprints have also been mentioned in philosophical discussions about the human ability to deal with unexplainable mysteries. They raise questions about the limits of human understanding and whether there may be phenomena that modern science cannot test or explain. Devil's footprints can be seen as a typical example of unexplained mysteries, and also a testament to the unexplored in this universe. Conclusion: Devil's footprints, an eternal symbol. While the Devonshire Devil's footprint may never be fully deciphered, its influence in popular culture is undeniable. Stories, movies, books, and legends have helped to keep this mystery alive for generations. From extraterrestrials to supernatural forces to parallel worlds, the Devil's footprint continues to be an endless source of inspiration for human imagination. So while there may not be a final answer to the question, what exactly is the Devil's footprint? One thing is certain. It will forever remain in our minds as a symbol of the unexplainable and the untouchable.